I think there are ways that we can probably have a conversation to address these things, and maybe in a way that doesn't make someone feel pigeonholed or in a certain way. But truly, if you ask me, like, so where are you from? Because I now live in the U.S. and I have actually had the fortune of meeting fifth generation Japanese. And so I myself, when I went to California, would ask, do you speak Japanese? And then I learned after the third person I met, who was third, fourth, or fifth generation Japanese, to just stop asking that question. But it was my curiosity that that brought me to that point. And so the same thing here. We have the opportunity to educate people, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity. So thank you, and thank you, Janelle, for mentioning this to me.
Great. Thank you very much, Cindy. Are you open to questions? If any member of the task force has a question? Would you like some questions, or are you open to questions?
Oh, I'm open to questions, sure.
Okay, sure. Councillor McKenna, Peter.
Hi, Cindy. It's Peter here. Hi. Do you have any advice for us? Because we're going to be going out this. We're going to hopefully be talking about a survey of our community soon about their experiences, and capturing your story and other stories might help inform us what's going on. Do you have any advice for our group?
Advice. Hey, I even sort of anticipated being asked this question, and I don't necessarily have anything offhand other than keep doing this, right? I think the awareness of why this task force is being created, and so just to spread more awareness about it, I think is the right way to go. I guess just to be open-minded.
Dave, we hear you now.
Are we okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, at the moment, I don't have any advice, unfortunately, because it's all so new. But I think it's wonderful that it exists. I really do.
Thank you. Additional questions?
If I could, Mayor Penko.
Hi, Chris. Yes.
Hi, Cindy. So if you were to give examples to young people of how we can be more culturally aware and sensitive, what would you share?
I suppose just try to avoid asking the question, like, where are you from? Because my answer really should have been Smiths Falls. And now when I'm asked, like, where are you from? I say I'm from Canada. And if I'm asked, so what's your background? I said, I'm Canadian. I mean, that is how I feel. I don't believe I feel any different from any of the friends that I grew up with. So to think about not asking the question, but I suppose you could ask it more sensitively. But then to have, for the people who are asked the question, to have the comfort and the strength to know that, well, why are you asking, right? And I'm not asking that in a rude way. I'm just curious to know, like, why are you asking? And I think that's one way for people to learn.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I also wondered, did you agree that if we share more about traditions and languages and foods and things like that in our education system, that we really kind of learn a lot about each other in that way?
I think that could certainly be helpful. Actually, my children who were born in America, they have a component that they do at least at every kindergarten, and I think also in first grade, where they do some type of activity where you create like a paper doll, and you can decorate it from whatever country in your heritage that you choose. And I know that's something that's really quite amazing, because we live in the Bay Area. My daughter was in a class where there were 44 languages spoken in the one classroom of 26 students.
Wow.
That was a real eye-opening experience. When I look at her class picture, it's very different than when I look at my class picture in terms of composition, where someone like me might stand out, visibly. But yeah, I think it's lovely. It's a great idea to learn more. And then, so my children can choose which country. So one year they chose Vietnam, which was my husband's ancestry. One year they chose Canada. And I was really proud that they chose Canada. So the way they dressed the doll was a t-shirt with a Canadian flag and a Happy Canada Day, and they were wearing white and red. I mean, I think that would be lovely. Yeah, like, or to like more of a focus on that kind of thing. It'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions for Cindy? Well, Cindy, thank you very much. It was welcome back to Smiths Falls for the time you're going to be here. We look forward to seeing you in future years as you return for it. We appreciate the time you've spent today and your insights and your experiences. And feel free to, you're welcome to stay as an observer or check in from time to time as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely stay as observer. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the opportunity.
No problem. So moving on with our agenda. Last meeting we had a delegation, then we had 3 breakout groups to delve into various priorities that we want to address as a task force. The first one is the community engagement working group, and this group has met, I think, at least twice, I believe, since our over the last month or so, and looking for a spokesperson for the community engagement working group to discuss the progress that you made away from the larger group. Councillor McCann, is that you, Peter?
I was hoping it wasn't me, but Raven and Janelle, Raven pulled it all together for us after we had our meeting. So it's Janelle, Raven, Jacob, and I. I'll introduce it, but then we'll get into the details, Janelle and Raven. So we found a survey that already existed. For Cindy's sake, we created or found a survey that talked about your experience growing up or being in Smiths Falls. And we asked a lot of questions. We wanted some demographics. We wanted the age of the person. And then we left lots of options open for choose not to answer. So Raven, we took a rough draft. We met, put our notes together, handed it all over to Raven, and she put it back together. And then I think last week we just sent it out for comment. And I know BIP got back to us, and we were hoping that there's 2 things that I'll say. One is we'd love feedback on the survey itself. And 2, when and how would we send it out to our community? So we had some ideas. We didn't get too far into that, but we're open to that. And I'll ask Raven and Janelle if they want to add anything. Particularly around the survey, maybe.
I don't know. Yes, BIP, you replied to everyone, and I think BIP gave us some really good feedback around the survey. I would probably open up the floor for everyone's feedback at this point. But one thing that BIP pointed out was the class wording, and I agree with that. We need to be mindful of income levels there, but there was an unsure option, and I think it's a good call out for us to maybe have a discussion around, only because I think that we've heard more and more people say that they're not quite sure of their heritage. They have, or they know an idea of it, but there's no deep dive into it. So that would be just something that I would like us to maybe discuss a little bit around that wording. And then I still think that we have some more to tweak out, but that would be a good starting point. I see, Chris, you have your hand up if you wanted to go ahead on that top.
Well, Janelle, first of all, I have to congratulate you all and say how remarkable this is. It's really quite something. The one thing that I was aware of, because I live with issues of disability and I have dealt with the Ontario Disabilities Act, is that the term health is separate from the persons living with disabilities. And so that we need to make sure that we have that in order for us to continue to represent that group of community members as well. And I also think that maybe a definition is part of what was going through my mind around what some of the categories are. We all seem, I think, to have a very good sense of that, but somebody in the community may or may not know these terms. And that could be for a number of reasons, including language barriers or sometimes being able to do oral communication is stronger than to do written communication. And this especially too applies for persons like myself, for example, who have visual issues of disability due to a different reason. And so also circulating in the community, we need to be prepared to let people know, I think, that we will accommodate whatever way is best for them to give the feedback. Because that is one of the things that I often have to ask for accommodation, and it takes care, I think, of some of the other areas, because if you are able to understand spoken language better than written language, then it gives a more inclusive picture, I think. So those would be my suggestions. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Cindy, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I apologize. I haven't seen the survey. So is this a type of thing where there are check boxes and you check, for example, identification of race or ethnicity? Is that the type of survey? Yeah. I don't know. This is harder when it comes to the tabulation of data because it takes more work on the back end. But at the nonprofit that I work for, I'm leading a program called Mentor Moms. And the purpose is to match an experienced mom with a new mom. And what we recognized as a staff is that it might be possible that when I have to make that match of people, there might be things like activities or languages spoken, especially in the Bay Area, that might allow me to make that match. And so when it came to the question of race, I was very uncomfortable about this checkbox. And so instead, we created it as in our Google form. We did an open-ended response as a paragraph. It's so that it's an optional question, first of all. So optionally, list what race your ethnic background, I think is what I call the question. And then I said, describe it as freely if you wish to answer it at all. And then I actually gave an example, and my example was, I am a Canadian with ancestry of Japanese, Chinese. That's how I answered it. So if you did that, then it's more free form, and that might also work for disability, right? So do you have a disability? If yes, please describe. But then the problem, of course, is the tabulation. So then someone will have to spend time and then input that information into whatever checkboxes you would have created in the first place. But it's an option if you are open to that.
Thanks, Cindy.
That's great feedback. We talked about the tabulation and the work that, because there's quite a few questions, and we realized if we get a good response, and we hope we do, we were trying to find a tool that would do some automated tabulation for us, or a spreadsheet, but we also left, I love your feedback, because I think we didn't leave enough room for people to just write out what they want. We always left other, but so that's great feedback.
Raven, did you have comments as well?
Yeah, no, I'm appreciating all the feedback. It's definitely easier to put something together when you get, it's constructive criticism, right? It's like how to better put this out there for our community, how to better represent everyone in a more inclusive way. And I think this is all really great. And I feel like if as a breakout group, we could get back together, kind of see if we can kind of retweak this and get this back out there. That would be really, really awesome. And I appreciate everything that everybody said so far. I've taken notes on literally everything. So thank you. I think this is great.
Could we just, Mr. Chair, could we just talk about what the group, if they've got advice of when we should try to send this out? Jacob's got the school idea covered, so we can get a lot of young people responding, we hope. So that might wait till September. Should we do it all at once in the early fall? Or any thoughts on what this will give us is the baseline data that might inform the rest of our discussions. So
Anyone want to share their thoughts on timing?
I think all at once in the early fall is a good idea. Well, you get the students and you get everybody else. Anyways.
Okay.
I would agree. I mean, we want to it's going to be available for a period of time, but I don't think we'd want to open it up in the next week and leave it open until October as an example. So I would think a couple of weeks in September is probably appropriate.
So if we tweak it, does the group want to see it again before we send it out, or should we then just we've taken your feedback, we've adjusted the survey, and then you'll know when we send it because you'll be part of that. But would you like to see it one more time or not?
Actually, if I could, Peter, I would, because I'll tell you that another thought I had was that some of the things that we'll deal with here maybe need to also be looked at by our accessibility committee in the town because of the Ontario Disabilities Act and the wording, but not only for one category. And the other thing, just for what it's worth, is I'm wondering if we have to consider also not just sending out once.
Good point, Chris. And that's something that can probably be added to an agenda of a future accessibility advisory committee meeting just for a review and consideration for any further input. Was it Raven, you had your hand up, I believe?
I do know that when we were discussing it as a group, we did have a plan for future engagement in this way. We just wanted to make sure that the first one we put out is kind of our baseline of information as far as that goes. We would continue to need to gather data throughout time, say every 6 months or so. But I mean, in the meantime, we would want to have our baseline and then from there, figure out what more we need to do, what more information we need to gather.
Thank you. So methods of engagement. Did the breakout group have recommendations on how we should I guess, most effectively engage with the community?
We talked a little bit about engagement and just using all resources possible to make sure that we're getting it out to anyone and getting, again, not just looking at getting responses, but getting really good data from our responses. So I think it's just coming together with our whole collective group and using those resources. And then even as Chris stated, making sure that it's in more accessible format. So if we're doing it as an online or even maybe having a paper copy at certain locations in town, then we can even look at scheduling time with specific members of our committee to have support to help people fill out these surveys and whatnot. So I think, again, we were just coming back and rediscussing kind of what guide we put out and then looking at how we collectively can work together and make sure that it's as accessible to everyone possible.
Super. And I guess also considering the realities that language could be a barrier, ensuring that's potentially available in various languages too. Okay. Any more feedback from this group before we move on to the next group? So I guess we look forward to the refinement of the survey. And again, it's circulated among the broader group. We'll all have an opportunity to provide any further feedback and have this ready to launch in September. So well done.
Yes.
Okay, reconciliation and acknowledgement working group. Chris Cutler, Charlene Catchpole, Tim and Michelle. So who would like to speak on behalf of this group?
Hi, Sean, it's Michelle. I think I can chat a little bit about the conversations that we had, as well as the follow-up meeting that I had with Mr. Commanda. So good morning. During our meeting, we talked about mechanisms or how we can create a space that's welcoming and would be inviting to the community. And my apologies, I'm just going to move away from a noise source. And we thought that a garden, a community garden of some sort would be really quite a lovely idea But I think it really was about what was in the garden, which became important. A permanent structure of some sort, whether it's a bench for people to sit and to be able to reflect. We thought perhaps a statue of some sort to reflect who we are, and that statue could be created by the community, and it could be a community perspective, and perhaps reach out for ideas and suggestions. Medicine wheel was one of the concepts that we spoke about, having a permanent medicine wheel as part of the garden. Perhaps something heart-shaped to be integrated within it. A reflection pool, perhaps, of some sort. There's the risk, of course, associated with that. And have the garden itself be populated with local plants and plants that are important to the Indigenous communities. Perhaps an area for smudging was thought to be important when we looked at it. And when I spoke to Mr. Commanda, he really felt that what was really important was its location. And he thought that, he actually thought somewhere near the locks would be lovely. He said, I know they're not local land, they're Parks Canada, I guess, land. He said, but being associated with the water would be really wonderful as well, because it's one of the elements. So those were sort of ideas from the concept of a memorial of some sort within the town of Smiths Falls. And when we came to the land acknowledgement, there was a subsequent meeting with Mr. Commanda, and he's actually provided us with a draft land acknowledgement, which I believe has been shared with everybody. And what's lovely about that is that land acknowledgement was created with himself and another elder. And it was created specifically for the town of Smiths Falls. And he was really quite proud of it when he was talking to me about the process and how they came about developing it. So I'm wondering if, and I know that would be a whole other conversation to look at that land acknowledgement and to really dive into it. And when you think about when you're going to use it, it's a fairly long land acknowledgement. It's not as long as the Mississippi Mills land acknowledgement, but it is fairly long. But I believe it covers everything. It talks about where we were, where we are, and really where we want to be. So I think, I don't know, Sean, if you wanted to have a look at that land acknowledgement now, or if you wanted to sort of take that as a separate item.
See if Nadine has it available to share, because I think if we have a chance to review it, it's something that we could potentially make a decision today regarding a recommendation for council.
Sean, unfortunately, I don't have an accessible copy of it. And I know that Charlene had some also options, I believe, of land acknowledgements. So I'm not sure where those are, because I think they all need to be looked at.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have Charlene's. I just asked Dave to share to his screen there with the land acknowledgement, so he
Okay.
should have that. And this was one that just was sent by Mr. Chuck Commanda to me, so see if Dave can bring that up. Dave, do you have that okay, or do you need me to try to share my screen?
I wonder if you could share your screen, Nadine.
I'll just pull it up here. Okay.
So Mayor Paintwell, can you read that? Because I can't at all access that.
Michelle, are you able to,
Sure,
Can you-
I can do that. So on July on July 21st, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet there today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. Before settlers arrived, this territory was subject to the Dish and One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee nations to peaceably share and care for resources. After settlers arrived, it became subject to the three-figure Wampum Belt, last carried by Algonquin elder William Commanda, which commemorates the sharing of the land with English, French, and Indigenous nations under the governance of natural law. We recognize with gratitude the knowledge Smiths Falls and contributions that the Algonquin people bring to the municipality of Smiths Falls. Today, Smiths Falls is also home to other Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We extend our respect for all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable and present contributions. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, we may care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come.
Thank you.
So built very specifically for the community and recognizing where we came from, where we are today, and that we do have future work to do.
I see Tim with his thumb up. Tim, would you like to comment further?
Yeah, that was well written anyways, and nicely said. I myself being Indigenous from the Ojibwe, from Northern Ontario anyways. Been a Smiths Falls resident since '92, and this is my home as well.
Do you suggest this is an appropriate acknowledgement?
I like it anyways, and it seems appropriate enough.
Thank you. Further, Aaron?
Very well written. I just, we would just have to vet it for grammar and spelling. I'm sure everybody else saw a few things in there, but that'd be my only recommendation, but very good that way.
Thank you. Nadine?
I did speak with Mr. Commanda. I just love talking to him and learned so much from him. And I asked him if we, just procedurally, so I understood, if we read that full message at every board and committee meeting, you know, every time we meet as a council or committee of council, if it's to all to be read. And he said that that was up to us, whether we would, you know, shorten it or read the whole thing. So I just wanted to share that. Just it's really well wrote, and I think the words are beautiful, and I'm excited to see this be brought forward.
Peter?
2 points. One on Nadine's. The county reads theirs, the Lanark County reads their land acknowledgement. So does Public Health at every meeting and committee. And I find it loses some of its effectiveness when they do it so often. So one thought would be that we start every month with the land acknowledgement, because there's a new chair for our committee of the whole at least, or we at least once a month, something like that. And my other thought is just going back to Chris's point, I too would like to see any other options for consideration. And but I really enjoyed this customized version for Smiths Falls as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have access to other options that were discussed at the point?
I can't speak for Charlene, so I think we would have to wait and see, but I know that in our working group, she did mention she had some. The other thing in respect is I really think we need to look at what the TRC has said. Personally, I feel it's important we always acknowledge the land we are on, So let me say that I'm on unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I think we must realize that at this point going forward, and it is beautiful that it includes that piece on reconciliation and how we need to write our relationships and continue to create respectful relationships. But I think that that's a really important thing to do, is to make sure that we are also looking at that picture of what came out of the TRC's recommendations when it comes to our land acknowledgement as well.
Thank you. Michelle?
And I agree. And there are so many land acknowledgements out there. There truly are. I mean, every organization has been trying to build towards a land acknowledgement before meetings, and municipalities and agencies. So I think it really is about picking one that's meaningful. And if you want to create one using other land acknowledgements, that's also fine. And what's unique about this one was it was created for the community by Mr. Commanda and an elder. So I think that's what makes this one a unique land acknowledgement. And I've read many other ones, and I can send one to you right now, Nadine, if you like, that could be looked at. And we have looked at the Mississippi Mills land acknowledgement as well. That was the one that that was in another meeting I was on. But Mississippi Mills has a really long land acknowledgement as well. And Peter, I agree about sometimes feeling like they lose meaning. However, we have to be respectful that we should be acknowledging in some manner as we're having, whether it's a meeting of the whole or a subcommittee, and coming up with something that remains meaningful and doesn't get too watered down.
Thanks, Michelle. Janelle?
Again, I haven't seen the other ones like most of us here, but I really like that one. I love how intentional it is. It's using an elder closely tied to our community to make it very intentional for Smith Falls. And then there's almost like this call to action of what we want to see for the future. So I've been using a lot of the resources online for land acknowledgements, and it's identifying just the history of it and bringing awareness there, but not many have a call to action of that inclusivity that needs to come next. So I really appreciate how this one is written. And again, it just blew me away. So I loved it.
Thank you. Yep. And then Tim.
Well, I have to be on my way. I have to go for 10 anyway. So it was nice being here and chatting with everybody. Well, listening to yours, and I will be back again.
Sorry, Tim, before you run, because my mistake, I failed to introduce you at this being your first meeting. So if you just take a moment, introduce yourself and advise her why you wanted to be part of this group, if you have one.
Well, my name is Tim Bazion. I've been living in Smith Falls since 1992. Before that, I was in Northern Ontario. I was born and raised on a small reserve just outside of Sault Ste. Marie. That's line band number 12. That's First Nations. My background is Ojibwe. I was brought up in a Roman Catholic community. I don't speak the Algonquin language. That was lost due to a part of my grandparents being on my father's side were residential school children anyways. So my grandfather lost his ability to speak the native language. My grandmother understood it anyways, and she could speak it. And when she was released from the residential school, she and her neighbor would always chat anyways. But other than that, I wanted to join the task force because I want to basically embrace the heritage and the background of everybody around anyways.
Well, thanks, Tim. It's wonderful to have you part of the group, and we look forward to your continued participation.
And Sean, I'll get back to you on what we discussed earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
And
thank you.
Okay, well, I hate to go, but bye, everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Bip?
Yeah, so I think I can echo the fact that it's a very good written statement there. I don't agree with it losing meaning at the saying at the beginning of every meeting, because like say going to temples and churches, you sing the same hymns all the time, and I don't think those hymns lose any meaning whatsoever. Maybe to come to some sort of compromise about that, it could be edited down for brevity. So the main thing I like about this particular statement is that it's unique to our area. So I think because it's so unique to our area, we really shouldn't look to others, because I personally wouldn't want any of the originality that's in there to be lost just by trying to copy the statements from other communities. And the main thing that's so important about this particular one is so the current elder, Mr. Chuck Commanda, it actually has a callback to one of his ancestors, whether it be, I'm not sure, it's grandfather or something like that. And so just bringing that down to here, and then something like written by Mr. Chuck Commanda, and then people can see, hey, it's written by this guy who's also mentioned in there. I really like it. Yeah, I really like it.
Great, thank you, Bip. All right, Chris, did you have another comment? Oh, Chris, you're on mute. Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
We do have a female elder who has also done teachings in our community, and I think that we maybe want to also reach out to her. I know that through Trinity, Reverend Ryan would have her information. I think it might be good to share this with her for her thoughts and possible feedback.
So what I suggest at this stage, since we have two members of the breakout group here and two who are Tim who had to leave and Charlene who wasn't able to be here today, why don't we turn this back to the breakout group? If you four could connect within the next month, perhaps review the potential statements, this one plus the other two that have been suggested, consult potentially with the elder that you've mentioned, Chris, and bring back, I suggest, a final recommendation to the task force at our next meeting. Hopefully at that point in time, we'd be prepared to make a recommendation to council with a suitable acknowledgement. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. The next group, Municipal Policy Guidance and Community Ambassador Program. And that included Constable Aaron Tompkins, Kaz, Bip, Alice, and myself. And I did put together a little PowerPoint to go over our points. So Dave, were you able to share that, please? I'm far from a PowerPoint specialist, so let's hope it turns out okay. Okay, next slide, please. As I mentioned, the participants and our objectives to develop municipal policy guidance and a training program, as well as to develop a community ambassador / allyship program. Next slide, please. So when it relates to municipal policy guidance and training, we discuss a need for further research into municipal policy guidance program that could add an anti-racism, anti-discrimination lens to the bylaws and policies as we, as council, would approach any new policy or bylaw. We also discussed a possibility of a training program for staff, and we consider the need for a review of our employment bylaw, looking through the same lens to ensure the municipality's hiring practices are inclusive and equal. Next slide, please. When it comes to municipal policy guidance and training, most may not be common in many smaller municipalities. I think we're willing to take the leadership role in that. Staff are researching various municipalities to seek policy that could be considered by the task force and council. So we hope to come back with that at the next meeting. And we also discussed the development of a training program. either internal or external, for frontline staff to ensure our municipal staff are fully prepared to meet the needs of a growing and more diverse community. One example that we came across is the Four Seasons of Reconciliation, a multimedia teaching unit that promotes a renewed relationship between Indigenous people and Canadians through transformative multimedia learning in collaboration with First Nations University of Canada. And we have a brief video there, which is a preamble for Seasons of Reconciliation to show now as an example, as an insight into the training program. So Dave, can you please show the video?
If Indigenous people were hired at the same rate, and if we were allowed to achieve the same level of education that you have in mainstream, we would be helping to contribute $27.7 billion to Canada's economy.
This Buzwah Fisheries site itself is one of the largest aquaculture sites in Ontario.
When First Nations are successful, the whole region is successful.
Call to Action 92, we saw the business world and corporate Canada as both the problem and the solution.
The First Nations are not asking for a handout. They're asking for a hand up.
There has to be a real shift in how corporations engage with First Nations.
If you want to make a difference in this world, this is one way to do it.
There's such a thing as economic reconciliation, and that's very important.
So it's the other video that says the preamble. Indigenous awareness training. My mistake. It's on the same page. The title on it says Preamble, Four Seasons of Reconciliation. My apologies. I resent the link, Dave, if that helps.
You should have it there now, Mayor Pinko. He's going to pull it up for you.
Hi, I'm Julia, and just like you, I'm a student. In this unit, we are going to embark on a journey towards truth and reconciliation and explore the past, present, and future relationship between First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Canada.
Reconciliation has said that, well, education got us here, education will get us out of here. So to all those students that are out there and looking as to how to improve their perspectives of how they move forward and support reconciliation, this is an opportunity for them to begin that learning journey and strengthen Canadian society as a whole.
A large part of our advisory circle is made up of First Nations University, one of the oldest Indigenous post-secondary institutions in Canada. This unit will focus on bringing forward the truth of Canada's history and help illuminate a pathway towards establishing a respectful nation-to-nation relationship. Welcome to 4 Seasons of Reconciliation. Four Seasons explores the rich and vibrant cultures of Indigenous peoples, as well as treaties, colonialism, residential schools, restitution, and the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Two-Row Wampum Belt was the first treaty established between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people after contact. The Two-Row Treaty is the very foundation that unifies and guides every element of the Four Seasons of Reconciliation unit. The Wampum Agreement, symbolized by 2 parallel running vessels, solidifies a peaceful, respectful, sharing-based coexistence. The 2 vessels travel side by side without interfering with each other's ways of life.
These belts are a reminder of the promises and reminder of the relationship that once existed between First Peoples and newcomers, a relationship of being equal, a nation-to-nation relationship. And so I think that's what reconciliation is about returning to that kind of relationship.
To hear Morris Switzer's full interview on treaties and learn from other contributors, you will have access to an online portal. You will also find videos, required readings, the final quiz, and bonus links for further learning. And as we learn about truth and reconciliation, listening and honoring the residential school survivors is a key component. In your portal, you will find the story of Margaret. She is one of the many voices of 160 years of residential schools. The aim is that, through learning about the truth, we better understand the goals of reconciliation to help us move forward together in shaping a better future for us all.
When we talk about the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation based on a medicine wheel, what we're talking about is looking at reconciliation from those different perspectives. So 4 seasons, 4 cardinal directions, a medicine wheel is meant to be a continuous journey. It doesn't start and doesn't end, it just continues.
Thanks, Dave. You can return to the PowerPoint, please. So this is one example of a training program that's available that we could utilize. So we'll send the link out to everybody to give people a greater opportunity to take a deeper look into this. And I think it could help stand as a foundation for the formation of a training program for municipal staff. Next slide, please. The University of Alberta Indigenous Studies program, the Faculty of Native Studies has developed a massive open online course that deeply explores Indigenous histories and contemporary issues in Canada. From an Indigenous perspective, this course explores key issues facing Indigenous peoples today from a historical and critical perspective, highlighting national and local Indigenous settler relations. This program is for students from faculties outside the Faculty of Native Studies with an interest in acquiring a basic familiarity with Indigenous, non-Indigenous relationships. They can be taken by anyone at no cost and at each student's individual pace of learning. I started this course a little while ago. I'm about halfway through it now, and I have to admit it's extremely insightful. It definitely helps develop a much deeper and broader understanding. And I think it is a long course. I think it's about 62 hours altogether. But for anybody who's interested, it is available. It may be lengthy when it comes to something that we would recommend staff take on. But I think from a general interest standpoint, I think members of the task force and members of our community are probably greatly interested in doing this and watching us or participating. So Dave, can you just show the trailer for this, please?
Indigenous Canada is a unique online learning experience that emphasizes Indigenous perspectives and worldviews. The collective intention of this course is to tell Canadian history from an Indigenous perspective. It's a 12-module course that investigates issues important for understanding the past and current relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous societies. Topics include Indigenous worldviews, fur trade, environmental impacts, legal systems and rights, political conflicts and alliances, political activism, and contemporary Indigenous life, art, and expressions. Faculty and staff at the Faculty of Native Studies at the University of Alberta developed the core vision of this course, and the rich and diverse content that emerged is due to the generosity of the many Indigenous authors, artists, elders, and knowledge keepers who gave their time to the project. We have so much to share with you. Come and engage with the perspectives of Indigenous peoples in our complex relationship with Canada in Indigenous Canada.
You just return to the PowerPoint, please, Dave. It's a very captivating program. And frankly, I would love to sit down and do it from start to finish in one sitting if it was all possible. It's very interesting. And I think it's something that everyone here would absolutely enjoy. And I think it's an experience that would help all of us gain a much deeper and broader understanding. Now, of course, these programs don't speak to the broader issues of racism and discrimination. So I think there's more work we need to do as a breakout group when it comes to addressing the broader issues, but I think it provides a great foundation for us to draw from. Next slide, please. So we also had a great discussion on a community ambassador / allyship program. We consensus that we need to engage with the community to connect with citizens that represent different cultural backgrounds and languages. And we discussed the development of a town website that could highlight profiles of our community ambassadors in both English and their native languages. Potentially the use of video to highlight these people. The intention here would help newcomers in our community connect with resources and to also promote Smiths Falls to the broader community. We are inclusive and that new immigrants to our town will have support from someone or multiple people who speak their language and understand their culture. So it'll be a recruiting effort and some training provided to members of our community who are willing to step up to be a community ambassador, to be an ally in a variety of ethnic backgrounds and cultures, to make sure that, say, newcomers to our community, especially those who may struggle with English to some extent, could have someone here to lean on as a saddle and become part of our community. So, sorry, next slide, please. So we discussed the town's website, suggestion that it needed to ensure it's available in a multitude of languages. And fortunately, at the bottom of our homepage, there's a translate option. You simply click on that and you can read our website in a multitude of languages. So fortunately, we have that box checked off. It was agreed that staff would look into a community ambassador allyship programs elsewhere as points of reference for the formation of our program. And while we've not yet found anything that speaks directly to what we're trying to accomplish, there are a couple of examples, both in Gravenhurst and South Dundas, that talk about community ambassador programs. And I think we could simply take that as a framework and build upon that. And we would need, as mentioned, a recruiting effort to ensure that we have create an opportunity for people in our community who would like to come forward to participate, and then provide that training program for them to be prepared to assist and aid people going forward. Next slide. I'm not sure if there's another slide or not. Okay, yes. Education and accommodation. Participants shared concerns about racism expressed by children, and there's wide consensus that education must be an important part of the outcomes of this task force, and include efforts to address the unconscious prejudice that exists in most people in one way or another. And it was also discussed the reality that most people who deal with racist incidents or face racist attitudes generally do not speak up due to fear of reprisal. And I think that taught by their parents and older family members that you simply, for lack of a better expression, suck it up and don't let it get to you. But we had consensus that it would be beneficial to have a safe method for people to report racist or prejudiced incidents anonymously, or at least confidentiality. And I think understanding that, I guess, continuing to suppress the feelings that may be attributed to exposure to racist incidents is not healthy, and to try and provide a forum for people to share those concerns and thoughts when appropriate. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Okay. So that's that was the outcome of our breakout group, and I will turn to our other members of our group to add further comments.
Great recap, Sean. Thank you for doing that. And we did also speak about food and bringing people together that way. I know that was kind of part of that discussion of the different foods that we can exhibit, and maybe have that as one of our part of a festival of some sort. Food always brings people out, and it's an easy icebreaker, I find. So
that's a great idea. And some of you may be familiar that I hosted sort of a Ukrainian New Year event for a few years and pre-pandemic, where my family, we have Ukrainian heritage, prepared a meal. We had about probably 150, 200 people who would show up. So, and that was primarily Ukrainian food, to give people that opportunity to experience that. And I think going forward, I think your point, Aaron, is well taken. A potluck, when possible, of various cultural dishes would be very much welcome in the community. Other thoughts from the group or anybody else in attendance? Cindy?
That works. Food totally works. We do that at our kids' school. There's an annual like multicultural food day, and we have we don't even have a sign up. You just have so the parents typically bring or prepare a dish that presents a part of their culture. It's a very, very popular event, and people socialize and they make a little list of what's in the food in case there's like food allergies and stuff. It's a lot of fun. And sometimes they have music playing. I think we hired our school has a PTA, right? So they use the money, I think, to hire like a band to perform.
Well, it bring people together with food obviously helps reduce barriers and creates understanding and develops relationships. So I think that's hopefully get through this COVID world as soon as possible, and have the opportunity to hold an event such as been described. Any further comments from members of that breakout group or the broader group?
I was just gonna say, I love the Indigenous training and all the resources you added in there in your breakout group. The only other thing that I would add into that is some diversity training. They have it from training specific to people that would say, like, I identify as privileged. So for myself, even, I identify as a very privileged person, and how I can be more inclusive and understanding of others. And I think that would be very important, only because if we're bringing in, and we have an allyship program and we're inviting more immigrants to our community, then we also need to have that added in approach of just how we call each other out and we identify how we say things and that open space here. If our allyship program doesn't have that space, we should provide some type of training. And then others within our community that might not want to be an ally, but would like to have the resources and that training as well. And then it can also tie into like when we have celebrations and different events in our community, we don't have to always come back to these conversations of saying this isn't okay to say, but we've all taken that step forward to really create that inclusive environment, and then we can truly celebrate.
Thank you. And what are the thoughts regarding, I mean, we've talked about training for frontline staff municipally, but what about training, the opportunity to link training opportunities to members of our business community and just to our citizens in general?
Yeah. Sorry, was anyone's hand up? I don't want to interrupt.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we didn't talk about making the diversity and accessible, all that type of training available to the local businesses, and that's a fantastic idea. And because one can argue that more people visit the local businesses than say go to like town hall, or I'm not sure the numbers behind that, but yeah, so the local businesses are very like front facing opportunities for thing. And I think you know, for the most part, like all the local businesses here, they're great. They're great, very accommodating. But just to, you know, just for other people outside to know that hey, like our local businesses have this particular training. It increases like comfort and like a peace of mind. Hey, like every space is a safe space essentially. So that's great. Yeah.
Thank you, Beth. Chris, you had a comment as well?
Yeah, I agree completely with Janelle and with Beth. I think that allyship, if we all learn how to develop that respectful relationship, which is in part what I believe as an ally is crucial, that we create safe places for everybody in the end, and more sensitive and awareness. I think that it has to be that people become aware, and in order to become aware, they have to meet. And so when you were talking before that about bringing people together over a meal, that is an incredible way to start that journey. But I think if allyship is the focus, when you were talking about training for the staff of the municipality in our town, I think that ideally everybody would take allyship training within the municipality, and then it would branch out, because our library is included in our municipality, the police services is included, so that all of that understanding, if it begins there, then we have a core or a foundation that can move out into the community. And then you mentioned earlier about ambassadorship. I really think we're all called to be ambassadors, and that's part of being an ally as well, in my opinion. So I'm just thinking that hopefully that is the way, because once you have a safe core group, then things can continue to ripple forward in a good way, I believe.
Great point, Chris. Thank you. Any further comments on this? So I think there's additional work for our breakout group. And I would suggest at this point that we will plan to meet prior to our next meeting to refine more and we'll deeper into more diversity and the opportunities there, and come back, be prepared to speak to it again when we meet as a larger group. I would suggest 4 weeks from now. Okay. Any further comments? Before we move on to item B on our agenda. Yes, Raven?
Hi, I just wanted to add some input for the, Reconciliation and Acknowledgement Working Group. Their idea for the memorial is kind of on board with what the Smiths Falls Art Council had kind of put forth as an idea. They had suggested kind of creating a sanctuary or a collective of ideas that had already been put forth. So like a bench, a plaque, and other works as well, and to collaborate with local artists and artisans from these affected groups. They feel like having the people who have been affected by the intolerance and been victimized by the hate within the communities in the past, or would have a better understanding of how to put forth what is seen as respectful for a memorial.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think the location, there's a lot of merit to discussing location, and to Mr. Comanda's suggestion. One potential area obviously would be along our waterfront. We do have park space, whether that's Centennial Park or even Turtle Island, especially considering the significance of Turtle Island to Indigenous culture. That may be a potential location as well that would be very suitable. So look forward to the group, I guess, again, digging deeper into this and coming back with some further suggestions. As a sidebar, Tim and Charlene and I had met a couple weeks ago simply regarding the possibility of a temporary and potentially a procession to provide some short-term recognition, understanding a permanent memorial will take longer to develop. And so we're looking towards Centennial Park and likely the use of solar lights to create something that would be visually impactful in a place where members of our community could really bring a solar light, put it in place, and potentially have a moment of silence to say a prayer or some recognition for the religious school children that were lost, and also those who survived. So that is a bit underway, and I think we're circling in other members of that section of the task force and the breakout group to get more engaged with that. So that moving on in our agenda, item B, policy respecting items that symbolize racism and discrimination. And Chris had asked that we add this to the agenda. And Chris, I know this is something you are extremely passionate about and purpose-driven. So I will turn it over to you to share your thoughts with the broader group.
Because I have been walking a path of reconciliation since I've been in our community, unfortunately, there have been some times a few years ago where there were visible signs in flags that were definitely harmful and racist. And why I'm bringing this up is because, especially now, even more than before, we need to look at what are in our bylaws and who will be responsible for addressing those issues when they arise in the community. We cannot, in respect when I say this, say that these don't have tremendously hurtful impacts. A young woman was working in our community and was very, very affected by seeing a particular flag that, again, similar to the statues, had tremendous harm for her and hurt. And that flag had been let to fly. It had been raised to the attention of our police services at one point, but it wasn't followed up, and we didn't have anything in place to deal with it. So please forgive me, but I think I have to give the example. It was a Confederate flag. And so, you know, there are people who do not understand the impacts of this. And at one point, what happened was it went from the one flag to there being two. And we can say, and it's true, we have a remarkable community with good hearts who stand up against these, but we need to have something we can do when this happens. Because whether it be language or symbol or flag, these all have tremendous impact. And I can remember during that time, and Mayor Panko, thank you. You apologized for our community. We must take responsibility. And I really feel that if we don't go back, because I think it has a falling in our bylaw section that was part of the problem with addressing flags. It is an issue, and I think that there are ways of responsibly, not only through education, but also allowing others to know that these symbols, which I see as racist, and I'm a Indigenous person. I'm a settler who is culturally different. I don't want to see that happen again. And so I'd like us to kind of come up with how we're going to address these types of things when they happen in our community. And that even once is too much, really. That's the point, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Look for further comment. Obviously, these symbols and flags are not welcome in the community, and I think we need to understand, one, I guess, what our bylaws, potentially federal laws, represent when it comes to the display of racist and discriminatory symbolism, and any limitations that may be in place today, or does the Human Race Code provide people that freedom of expression, or do we have that opportunity to put into place bylaws that could prohibit such symbols? So I don't have the answer today, but I'd like to, I guess, get further discussion going here from the group, and Aaron, if you're able to provide things from a law enforcement perspective, that would be much appreciated too.
Sorry, did you want that now, Sean? Sorry.
Sure, I guess so. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, so I do recall that that conversation, and I know I did speak with Chris at the time, and I have spoken to the mayor and other town officials. Nothing was, as far as a criminal offense, there was nothing there, and our hands were kind of tied, right? There was no bylaws in place, so there was nothing prohibiting, and it would fall under that freedom of speech. So I believe that's where it was done. But just so you know, we did look into it. I personally looked into it. I personally spoke to that individual several times. And that individual is just, no, this is my freedom of speech. It means something to me differently than it might mean to somebody else. So unfortunately, like criminally, nothing that we could proceed with. And I did report back to the mayor and other town officials in regards to that, because it was a hot topic. There was media coverage as well, and again, it wasn't like we just ignored it. We did look into it and did report back to that. And I think the individual eventually took the flags down after receiving kind of a lot of attention, maybe not so good in some ways towards him or her. So.
Aaron, are you familiar with any bylaws or provincial laws, federal laws that could, I suppose it might be more bylaw, that are out there in other communities that we could consider?
Haven't looked into any of that, but definitely would be worth exploring, right? And definitely within a municipality, that's something that we can incorporate more specific towards our community, right? And I'm sure there's got to be something out there somewhere.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Nadine before I go to Bib, Janelle, and Cindy.
Just on that, we have researched it and we'll continue to research it. So far, it's more so a flag policy that with respect to discriminatory flags, but I've asked the staff resource to also look into symbols, because that was another concern that had been brought up. So we are trying to find something that incorporates both, but we haven't found anything yet.
Okay. Thank you. Janelle?
I was just going to add in that maybe it would even be something that we look towards in the future of just open conversation and dialogue. Aaron, you come to me a few different occasions about being able to have a police presence connected to the community. So maybe along the lines with these issues, and it's because it's beyond just symbols. Sometimes it's, you know, just moments where, you know, it could be a poster in town. It could be, I'm openly admitting I was pulled over. Well, I had a police officer come to my house a couple weeks ago because somebody had called them and it accused me of impaired driving, except for it was 10 in the morning on a Sunday. And even a resource like that, like, what can I do about it? Because there was no reason. I wasn't, you know, driving in an irregular way. I was doing my normal commute to get a cup of tea in the morning. So providing our community with resources of how can we follow up. It's hard because people do have their freedom of speech and they do have rights and we don't want to infringe on that. But then how can we support and create a community where people can get feedback, where people can, you know, connect with our community police officers and say, hey, this happened. I don't feel good about it. And our Smith Falls police have been so involved and so supportive to really commit to that inclusivity and the diversity in town. So we already have that partnership, and just utilizing that to give people feedback and make sure that they feel seen and heard, and we're not just letting it slide. So we can't control what others do, but we can make sure that those affected have the support they need. And then we can look at these issues and see what can we do about it.
Thanks, Janelle. Biff?
So I think there is a thing in municipalities where you can like declare something like a hate symbol or a thing. Is there? Or
and I don't know if we know the answer to that.
Okay, so I mean, because quite frankly, nowadays, like, it really is just a hate, like, it's a hate symbol, and like, I think the main rebuttal to it is what's the history, and then that doesn't really stand when you bring up arguments such as, hey, like, what heritage or history were you celebrating that flag is associated to? And so when you bring up questions like that, the whole, oh, like, I'm celebrating my heritage, it falls apart. So really, I think as a town, you know, we need to come out and say, hey, this is a hate symbol. Like, as it is in 2021, it's a hate symbol. And what a lot of people, like, I've noticed, and, you know, in my passion or whatever, they use that, like the Dixie flag, as like a veil just to be racist, right? And it's like, it allows them to be like racist from the shadows, so to speak. So I think, I mean, obviously it's a person does have the right, like, the freedom of expression, et cetera. But yeah, that's a hate symbol. So I think if the town comes out and says something, I think it'll be a stance for sure. So yeah.
Super. Thanks, Pip. Cindy, I think you had your hand up earlier.
I just, when that was mentioned, I Googled it. And it made me say absolutely true. So unless it's proven to be discriminatory and proven to be posted for the purpose of hatred, it's still legal because of the freedom of expression laws. There is another township of Clearview that last year actually, I think, worked with the law firm to try to have the Confederate flag ruled as a symbol of hate. And then that's it so far. I guess Collingwood Town Council also. So I guess there are other communities similarly wanting to do the same thing. But it would seem like something that should be tackled on a much broader viewpoint, in my opinion, like provincially, federally, you know, and I'm sure there are talks underway, but if there's a way to maybe appeal to an MPP or something.
RMPP?
Nadine?
Just procedurally, if this group wanted to, as a recommendation, share that with council, the process politically would be that council could pass a resolution detailing that you would like to see that flag, you know, be declared as discriminatory or whatever the wording would be, and that, you know, not be allowed to be flown in any municipality in the province of Ontario or any province of Canada, however the wording is that you would like. But that's procedurally what could be done as a recommendation from this committee, just to give you an idea of what could be done.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I know there are symbols which are, I believe, are banned in Canada. I think the Nazi swastika is one example, but perhaps we can do further research into it. And if it looks like the only avenue is to encourage change at the federal level, then council could pass a resolution speaking directly to symbols of hate and racism, discrimination, specifically mentioning the Confederate battle flag as one example. And we could send that to our member of parliament, and we could circulate it through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and ask that others consider similar action. So that may be a path forward, but I think in the meantime, we will try to, I guess, rule out the possibility of a municipal bylaw having the authority to ban it within our borders. But aside from that, I think that might be a great path forward. Chris?
Yes, sorry, my phone's about to die, so I will just share. First of all, thank you, everyone. And secondly, what you're saying, Sean, is an example of allyship. It's what we have to do wherever we are. We may be visionary. I'm sorry to even use that word in this day and age, but sometimes we have to have the courage to literally start the process and plant that seed in order for things to change. And that means all of us, at least that's my experience as an ally and a supporter, because literally when one of our community is hurt, we are all harmed. And we can never forget that. And so Janelle, I apologize too for what happened, because we need to take that responsibility and we need to speak up when these things happen, because that's not acceptable. And I think that is what I've learned in my journey and my walk, is that being an ally means that we look after every part of our community, every person of our community. And we do not say that because there's nothing that exists, we don't have a responsibility to do more to change it. So thank you. And I'm going to leave you now. Take good care, everyone. See you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. So what I suggest is that in preparation for our next meeting, we can review any possibilities of the municipal bylaw. And then if that doesn't look like a possibility, we can prepare a resolution for a recommendation to council that we would seek a change at the federal level for symbols of hate, including the Confederate battle flag. Any further comments on this before we wrap up? Okay. Any closing comments before we close? Well, thank you everyone for your participation today. Cindy, it was great to have you as part of our group. Enjoy your time in Smith Falls. And
I don't know if I'm allowed to participate once I'm back in California where we live now. But if it's a committee of volunteership, the allyship committee sounds really interesting to me. I think it's very progressive, honestly. I'm happy to hear about it. So let me know if I can still participate. I'd be happy to.
Well, feel free to continue to share your thoughts, and if you have any connections out there that might help us, we would appreciate that. So super. Okay, next meeting. I believe 4 weeks is our cycle. 4 weeks from today hopefully works for everyone. In the meantime, I think we have breakout groups, which we'll probably we'll be doing some work in preparation for the next meeting. Okay, thanks everyone. Enjoy the sunshine. Have a good balance of the day.